5, 4, 3, 2, 1, fire. The only thing we have to fear is fear.
Mile 18.
This is Endurance Nation.
Hey there, Coach Patrick here from Endurance Nation with a special word for those of you looking to improve your winter training. We've created the Out Season. If you haven't heard about it, it is the 14-week focus program that has minimal hours, maximal results, designed to take your endurance fitness that you build all season long and turn it into something that's both manageable and productive in the winter. Most endurance athletes take the winter off. They adventure, they recover, they go aerobic, they go long. We don't do that inside Endurance Nation. We've inverted the commonly mistakenly understood equation for endurance and noted that you can actually build really strong functional threshold power in the winter when we don't have corresponding volume demands on our lives. And so we do that with the Out Season. If you're looking to learn more, go to endurancenation.us/out season. From there, you can download our Out Season PDF, learn all about how it works, and get up to speed with a few emails in terms of getting your winter dialed in so you can be your personal best this season. Don't hit the spring gasping for air, trying to figure out if your equipment works and trying to get yourself ready for that race in short order. Spend all winter with us inside the team, training together, working together, learning together, building an engine that's going to sustain you not for the entire year, but beyond that with this year-long consistent training program brought to you by Endurance Nation. Hey folks, Coach Patrick here, Endurance Nation, endurancenation.us with another podcast. This week, part of our end of year series, I'm talking about how we can recap your year using that same 4 keys methodology, the same construction that we use on race day. We're going to bring that in here and take a look at your overall year. Why do we do this? We're obsessed inside Endurance Nation about getting better. And we realize that getting better has 2 specific components, 3. One, the first one I just added right now, is you have to be doing the work. If you're not doing the work, success not going to find you, my friend. So sorry. Number 2, you have to be willing to go back and take a look at what you did. You have to own what you did. So many athletes struggle with this because you see it with an ego problem. People will say, oh, I was running, but the weather changed and I got sick. Or they'll say, I was doing this run training, but my shoes had the wrong drop in them and my foot got injured, right? And they're placing the blame externally instead of taking ownership of that by saying, I was running and it got cold and I didn't adjust. I was running and my feet started hurting, but I ignored it. And it turns out that I bought the wrong shoes and now I had a problem. So what we're going to try to do here today is help you to shift that focus from external blaming, external stimuli that cause consequences to taking ownership of. We're going to put you more in that first person role. So you have to be able to take ownership. So do the work, then you got to take ownership of the things that went wrong. And number 3, you actually have to make the changes going forward. And that's the big delta. So one of the reasons why Endurance Nation is built on a community bedrock is that your peers are there to not only remind you, but they also provide lessons learned that you can adopt and pick up and take with you as you go forward. Our goal is to accelerate your personal growth, not just from a physical perspective through the workouts. That's just like level 1. The long-term goal is to say, how do I become someone who makes great decisions, who races in alignment with the team, with our collective ethos, with our improved understanding of what execution means, doing all the right work, making all the right decisions. And that comes from that community space. So as we go through this process of reviewing your year today, I want you to remember that those are our 3 underlining components that are super important. I'm not worried about the work because the people who show up for Endurance Nation, they're already doing the work. They get it. They've done a couple races and here they are looking to get better, right? They had someone who taught them how to swim, but they don't need to learn how to swim anymore. They've got to balance the schedule. They've got to find opportunities for growth. They got to find the right races. They have to come up with an execution plan. They're looking for a new bike fit. All the pieces are about accelerating your growth beyond just the baseline. That is what Endurance Nation is for. That is what we do best. And you'll find peers here inside the team who are doing the same work as you, finding that unlock, staying with the busy life, the busy schedule, but making sure they're making progress athletically. That's what we were born to do here inside the team. And you're happy to join us if you want to do that. All right. So this week, we're going to talk about your season and we're going to use the 4 keys. Are you ready? All right. So the 4 keys, just as a recap for you, if you're tuning in for the first time, this is a race execution methodology, but it's an approach approach that we use beyond that for every aspect of an station. Some people even use it at work, at home, etc. That may be, but it's important for you to understand sort of the role of this framework as we go through the process of becoming better at our core activities. So number one, race day is about execution and not fitness. Number two, nothing matters until we get to the line. So we're really being focused. Number three, how do we stay in the box until we get to the line? What are all the things that we can control in the box, can't control? Out of the box, ignore them, right? They're just distractions. And number four, what's the one thing that we use, right? What's the one thing that when things go really wrong, what do we pull out of the box? We know we just got to get things done and everything around us is crumbling, but we go ahead and get it done. That's what we're looking for here today. So we're going to dive in and take a look at your season and understand a little bit more. So number one, let's talk a little bit about that execution versus fitness side. The number one challenge that endurance athletes have with their season is really poor decision making. It could be too ambitious with early season training. It could be not ambitious enough. It could be ignoring problems that you have, like from training injuries, or just logistical problems that you're having with your schedule, and so you start cutting out sleep, etc. But there are a series of decisions that we make that have both positive and negative outcomes, perhaps even neutral if you want to argue that case. But ideally, we're looking at making decisions that allow us to improve our situation, and then we bake those decisions into just our future operating system as we go forward. So taking a look at your season, which training decisions did you make that paid off and which ones did not, right? So if you decided to go into your season and say, hey, I'm going to do a marathon early in the year, and I'm going to use that to build my run base, and then that run base is going to carry me through the second half of my season. I'm going to do some 70.3 triathlons and so on. Sounds great. Sounds good on paper. So I'm going to do some more running in the winter. Did that pay off for you? Were you able to do the running in the winter relative to what you would normally do in a normal year? Go back, take a look at the log. Were you consistent? Did you run well through that block? Not about the marathon performance. That was our last podcast. We talked about reviewing a past race. We're just talking about, was the training good? Did you get the training results based off of the understanding you had going into the year and then the milestones you had set out for yourself from a planning perspective? So were you consistent through your training? Were you able to stay healthy? Were you able to run at the pace that you wanted to race at? Did you make specific changes for that? Once you got through that marathon, were you able to sustain your run fitness even though you were recovering, or did you not recover enough? Let's go back and take a look at those decisions and decide which ones worked out to the positive and which ones did not work out. And these decisions are actually really important because we need to learn from these to go forward. For example, let's say you decided to run 40 miles a week as part of your marathon prep, and after a couple of weeks, you got injured. That 40-mile decision was not a great decision. You can change it. It's not just don't run 40 miles, but maybe it's, hey, I need a longer buildup to get to 40 miles. Maybe it's, I can do 40 miles for 2 weeks, but then I need a lighter week, right? What are the changes that we'll make to that process? So take a look at those decisions. And once we know what those decisions are, we can start editing them and improve upon them going on a go-forward basis, okay? Number two, we talk about the line inside endurance. That's where things get hard. Where was the line in your season? Where did the joy leave your season? That's an easy marker, right? Where did it go from being fun to being like, this is work and I don't like it and I'm dragging myself out of bed for your season? Part of the challenge of being an endurance athlete, like we all are here inside Endurance Nation, like you, our fans and listeners, is that you set a big goal. Big goals don't just happen. And if you fail to meet your big goal, 9 times out of 10, it's because you didn't put in the work, right? And so we've got to find a way that you can actually make sure you get the work done to get it to achieve your goals. But therein lies the rub, because doing the work is hard. Doing the work is fatiguing. Doing the work can sometimes not be fun, right? It can be hard. You can trick yourself. You can give yourself some candy. You can do it with friends. You can be social on Zwift, like I'm always on Zwift. But at the end of the day, that training turns from something I get to do and turns into something I have to do. So we have to really wrestle with this concept. So when was that tipping point for you last year? Like, where did you hit that block? Where were you? Like for me, I hit that block just after I had finished the 312 race in Mallorca. It's like a 200-mile race or something like that, I think, or close to 200-mile race. And I had done a ton of training to get ready for it. But that last week, I was just so excited to train with my buddies that I just crushed myself through the whole week and then did the race. So I was exhausted. And then, of course, I did the race. So I was even more exhausted. And I needed like a month and a half of downtime when I got back. In fact, I had to rebuild for a second part of my season because I overdid it when I needed to take a break. So for me, that was the tipping point for my season. I was able to get it back. And I was fortunate that I'd done a lot of work early, but I probably could have had a much better year if I hadn't put myself in such a hole. So really understanding that my decisions that I made early on and the cost of those decisions, and then the downstream impact of those decisions. So my line, which I was hoping to come in like August, September, came a lot earlier. As a consequence, I had to take a break middle of the year. Also as another consequence, once I got through Steamboat and Leadville in August, I was done. Like September, October, I really had no desire to go out and race or do anything else because I was just toast. I just had gone through all the mojo for the year. So really taking a look at that and understanding what decisions, what things can you do differently to make sure that line, wherever it happened for you, doesn't happen. And one of the best ways to do this is to just connect with people or read about people and how they motivate themselves, how they stay on track, what they do, right? So some of the most successful, consistent racing athletes we have don't take their training that seriously. They move from race to race and they're not thinking about training. And so try and figure out what changes can you try this next year. And it's not about going from it didn't work to it works. It's not a switch on the wall that we're flicking, but it's possible that you could understand better how to structure your year, structure your expectations around your training and racing and your schedule so that you don't repeat the same mistakes you made before. And maybe there's an opportunity in there for growth. You can have to roll the dice again. It may or may not work out, but each time you go back and try and figure out that process, you get better and better at doing it. So you think that maybe my training was the limiter. That could be one. It could have been something else. It could have been another constraint in my life. Maybe work was really hard. So I had to do a ton of work. I wasn't getting sleep. It wasn't so much the training, but my inability to rest was the big limiter. But I have to try one of them in this upcoming season. So I'll make a decision. I'll put that on there and then I'll see what I can do. Okay, awesome. Let's move to the third part, the box. So when we talk about the box, it's what we can put inside of our box and what we can control and what we can't control. And so when we think about things that are inside our box or outside our box and looking back at this past year, what are things that were inside our box that turned out not to be inside our box, right? What are things that are outside our box that are now we want to move inside of our box, right? So when I started last year, I had a full-time job, everything was great, et cetera. But over the course of the year, I had to transition to a different job. I was on unemployment for a while there. And as a result, between those two different points, that was something that was like I considered to be inside my box was clearly outside my box. I had to go back. That transition put a lot of stress on my system and I believe was a contributing factor to some of those challenges that I had early in the year. So that would be one of them that was like, oh, I should never take that for granted in terms of what's inside or outside my box from those external elements that I felt. I should always recognize those as external elements and act accordingly, right? Plan accordingly for those elements. Another piece of something that was outside my wheelhouse that I want to bring inside was that I learned that if I'm going to be successful at some of these off-road races, I've got to spend more time riding. And so I was strategic about getting out to do some training in those areas. I was fortunate to be able to hack that system. But I do know that going on a go-forward basis, if I want to become successful at more of these off-road races, I've got to spend more time, either officially budget that time and expand that time or adjust my expectations accordingly from a performance standpoint. So if I'm going to get better at that thing, riding my bike, riding a mountain bike, I've got to bring that thing inside my wheelhouse and do more work inside that space. I cannot have it outside my space for sure. Okay. Another element that I feel like is outside of my box I've been struggling with is body composition, nutrition. As I head closer to that 50 milestone here, losing weight, getting back on track to last year's race weight becomes harder and harder. And the work I need to do, both from a focus standpoint, nutrition standpoint, grows commensurately. And so I've just really got to be focused on that stuff and make sure I'm good. And so I've got to make some better choices around nutrition and nutrition decision making as I go through that process. So two elements there. Okay. All right. So some things inside my box, some things outside my box, some recognition, reflections for me. Take a look at yours as well. What was the part that you had taken for granted last year that turned out you shouldn't have taken for granted? And what parts did you learn or adopt last year, adapting to some of the changes that came that you want to bring inside the box to make sure when you start this next season, hey, this is in my box. And I want to start with these things that are inside my box first because they help me make the best possible decisions. If you literally imagine opening a box at the beginning of the year, what's inside that box? What's the message you're leaving for yourself? What are the tools and resources you have? Put it in your favorite action hero movie when the hero opens the box and he looks inside and says, oh, these are all the tools I have for my mission. What are those mission tools inside your box, right? Those are the things we want to think about now and make sure you have those at the ready. Make a short list so you can enter next year ready to go. All right. Last but not least, the one thing is that sort of driving force, that key motivation got you through those hard times. So this is an important one because things get hard in life. There's racing hard, and then there's life hard. There's socially hard. There's interpersonal hard. There's all sorts of challenges that we face. And in many ways, endurance sports can be like therapy, right? Cheaper than therapy. I always tell my wife that mountain bike cheaper than therapy. But I think it's an important part to recognize that while endurance sports can be a source of motivation and refuge in some cases from the challenges that we face external to our fitness lives, it's not always the sole source of your inspiration. And there are factors that come in and influence you. So it's really important to step back and say, what were the things that kept me on track? What were the things that allow me to keep going across the course of my year that were net positive, right? And not just a fear thing. If I don't do it, I get in trouble, but more so, hey, what's that opportunity I had or what inspired me? Like really sit back and be like, what were the things that I reached for. So you go back, imagine yourself at that low point and say, what did I do what did I grasp for that made a big difference? For me, obviously my amazing family was incredible rock for me. Also some mentors that I reached out to, especially when I was in that unemployment section of time. From a fitness side of things, I went back to basics. I went back to Matt and we hashed a plan that was much more focused and allowed me to dial the training volume down that I'd done earlier in the year and get into a much more successful rhythm that I believe set me up for what I needed to do in terms of execution at Leadville, which was massive. So there were some expertise elements there. And those are all things that I'll take with me on a go-forward basis. And I'll also use this end of year milestone as an opportunity to just go back and say, hey, thanks. Like totally saved the day. I really appreciate all the things that you brought to the table. And if it weren't for your support in it, I wouldn't be where I am today. So pay it forward a little bit to share that out. Okay. So when we think about your year, when we think about how things worked, using the 4 keys framework allows you to step out of that binary decision making and that reflexive decision around good year, bad year, good year. Just like you think about, Foo Fighters, love Foo Fighters, new album this year, good album, bad album, good. There's a lot more into it, right? Like you got to spend a little more time on that. Foo spent a ton of time putting that album together, thinking about it relative to all the other albums. And it's really important that you block off an hour or two this weekend, whatever it is, just step back and reflect on your year and figure out what was good and what wasn't good. Because there's places where you can invest more time. If you need more, if you are unable, for example, to be a good, let's say, partner or professional or whatever those elements are, like when we go back to thinking about your year last year, move forward and say, I'm going to put those pieces in, that would be awesome. So we want to really be strategic around that. So take the time, really sit down, write these things down, save it in a place. So next year, when you get started and you start moving into each phase of the year, you can pull out that sheet, that doc, that note, that image and say, you know what, I'm starting from here. I'm starting from a position of strength, a position of knowledge. I am iterating. I am evolving as an athlete. And that is what's going to help you get better next year. It's not just about a new bike. It's not just about new shoes. It's not about a new diet, new supplement, anything like that. It's about making sure that you are making iterative steps, working your way forward along a path, understanding sometimes have to take a step backwards. That's all right. But that you are working in a path that allows you to become better and smarter. And that process overall is something that's a net positive for you as an athlete. And that positivity will have downstream effects on all aspects of your life. All right. Thanks everyone for tuning in. Best of luck with your race recap. If you've got questions or comments, let us know on the social medias. Those of you on the team, hey, put it in the chat. Would love to see what you're coming up with and what your reviews. I've done mine out here in public, but would love to hear yours as well. Have a fantastic week, and I'll be back with another end of year episode soon. Take care, everybody.
Endurance Nation.
Hey, podcast fans. I know you love the podcast because here you are, you're listening to it and you're still listening to me talk right now. Did you know you can get content just like this in your inbox once a month? We send out a great newsletter. We call it, guess what? The Unfair Advantage. That's right. It's our information to you, something that separates you from the competition. If they're not here, then they don't know. But if you are here, then now you do. Zero excuses. If you go check us out online at endurancenation.us/newsletter, it's your opportunity to enter your email address, sign up for these updates. They come once a month, sometimes twice a month, depending on my race schedule. And it's your chance to get insider information that's going to help you become a better, smarter athlete. Don't miss out on this chance to get ahead of the competition. It doesn't cost you any money, and it's not a ton of work. It's just your email address. That's endurancenation.us/newsletter.
For more information about Endurance Nation, visit us online at endurancenation.us. The provided music is from the Podshow Podsafe Music Network. Check it out at music.podshow.com.